So Google's AI overviews drive me fucking crazy. I looked for that GIF that I sent to the Discord the other day of somebody being pruned in the show Loki, and I typed in Loki pruning GIF, and Google's AI overview is like the whole page, and it's like Loki pruning GIF refers to the concept of pruning in the Marvel TV show Loki on Disney Plus. And the concept is that when somebody, and I'm like, dude, they have ruined their product. Like, I want a GIF. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, I want a GIF. Like, just give me the GIF that I want to download and copy. And instead, it's like, did you know that in the show Loki on Disney Plus? Like, yeah,
Completely
it's
missed your intent.
literally the AI, like that's the thing is that they had this really refined intent algorithm where it was like, okay, if somebody's searching this, the subtextual context is they want this. And they had that like totally nailed. It's almost like a job interview. Somebody asks your relationship with your last manager, they're not like, tell me about your manager. They're like, are you going to be a problem on my team? Is the subtextual context, right? And
Mhm.
Google was a job candidate that understood the subtext and be like, oh, I know what they're asking. And now they're the shitty job candidate that's like, I hated my manager. They ruined my life.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, that's a good start to the podcast. So, I am Colin McIntosh. This is Nate Shear. We are doing our first podcast interview style conversation about recruiting, job searching, resumes. We own and operate sheetsresume.com. Nate is one of our software engineers who works diligently on our AI resume builder. His full-time gig is at Eventbrite, where he's a staff software engineer there. But Nate and I actually met. You should probably tell this story. It'd be fun from your perspective. But we met 13 years ago now, when I was in
Yep.
college,
Yep.
and you were a recruiter, and you got a resume that came across your desk, right?
Yeah. You we recruited for Bridgewater Associates, hedge fund in Connecticut.
Are we allowed to say that they
And
were a client now, a decade later?
I
That
I
we
think, Elm Talent doesn't I think it's kosher at
They
this
don't
point.
exist anymore. Okay, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, Bridgewater was all about are you the right fit for our culture? And they quickly determined that Colin was, but the problem is they didn't have a role for him. So I think I don't remember exactly how long, but I feel like it was like 6 to 9 months of like every new role that would come up. I'm like, what about Colin? And you did what a candidate should do. You continued to stay on our radar and check in and touch base, and in a respectful way, and made us want to continue to find a spot for you. Finally we did. Maybe it wasn't meant to be, but
So Nate hired me at my first job at Bridgewater, and that was a long recruiting process. I think I started talking to them in January of 2012, my senior year of college, and I got hired in September 2012 was when I finally started the job. So it was about a 9 month recruiting process, like you said.
yeah.
And then I got fired in January 2013 because I was really bad at the job they ended up placing me in. I think it's so funny in hindsight that they put me into an administrative assistant role, like knowing what I know now about my brain chemistry, like how I think, how I operate, like the things I'm interested in. And it's really funny because there were people on the Bridgewater team that recognized that and saw that right away. Like my boss, really bright guy, named Michael, like really talented, intelligent guy, and then my other boss, Ian, also brilliant guy. They met me, and I remember the way they have conversations in front of you. And they literally in front of me turned to the person that was training me, and they were like, "This is the wrong guy for the job." And I was like, whoa, like it's like my first week. And I was like, whoa, guys, like you just met me, like give me a chance. And they were like, no, like you don't have the right temperament, you don't have the right personality profile, you're an ENTP, this is gonna be a disaster. And I was like, okay. And sure
Great.
enough, dude, as an admin, I ruined these guys' lives. I remember one time Ian pulled me into his office and he was like, so you see how my calendar today has back-to-back meetings? And I was like, yeah, like you had open space for meetings, so I scheduled 7 meetings. And he's like, yeah, so that's going to ruin my whole fucking day because not only do you have me at 3.5 hours of straight meetings, which is not healthy, he's like, but also you didn't leave any time for me to walk from one meeting to the other. This is a large campus, Colin. You need to leave because the way my ADHD brain works is you end one meeting at 3:30, next meeting starts at 3:31, and I can go any distance in the world, any distance in the universe, I can traverse in 30 seconds or less, right? Like that's why I'm
Right.
always late. My getting to the car, leaving the apartment. Oh, I forgot that I have to take a shower. In my brain, showers happen instantaneously, right? There's no, it's no,
I also
and
suffer from this condition. Just ask my wife.
it's awful. It's incurable. Um, but yeah, so I tell people this story a lot because there are so many kids who get fired from their first job or don't have success. And I love telling them, like, yeah, I got fired from my first job. And then my second job, you hired me at Elm Talent Group, which was our recruiting firm. And that was actually where I feel like I really blossomed for the first time in my career. Like I really loved recruiting. I loved helping people. It was very fulfilling.
Yeah.
But I think I told you then my main, I think I'm curious what your main problem with recruiting was. Mine was truthfully that I couldn't help everyone that came across my desk. It like broke my heart to tell people like, I'm sorry that your family doesn't have insurance and you can't put food on the table, but you're not a good candidate for any of my open roles and I can't spend time talking to you. Like that was so heartbreaking for me to have to tell people.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me too, I definitely, in general, I operate from a space of like, if I can help this person and they haven't done anything, to hurt or like if they deserve it, which is like my default state, I will try and do it. And yeah, like when you're trying to, recruit for Bridgewater or other firms and, you got to make money and make placements, like those two things don't always coexist very well. So yeah, there's still a number of candidates that like, unlike you, didn't get the job. And I felt bad. There's nothing you can do.
I
But yeah,
still remember the names of some of the candidates who didn't get jobs. Like, I remember this kid named Oscar. I remember this really smart kid from Yale who this is like one of the ugly things about the job, and I'm not sure how you perceive it at the time. We were both in our early 20s. You're 1 year older than me, right? You're
I think I'm
89,
two. I
88.
think
You're
I'm
an
two
88,
years.
2 years older
I'm
than me, yeah.
87. Yeah.
87, yeah. But yeah, so I remember there's this one kid, and I actually tell candidates of ours at Sheets Resume when they ask me about, discrimination in recruiting. This is a topic that comes up a lot. And I tell them there's this one candidate he went to Yale, he got like a 3.8 GPA, but he had like a name that sounded, I don't know, African or like it was a hard to pronounce for
Yeah.
American English speakers. And I'll never forget, I won't say who it was, but I submitted his application to one of our clients. And we did have like 15 clients. So it's not just, the banks or the hedge funds, like there are startup clients and all sorts of stuff. I submitted his application and the hiring manager said, do you really think he's as smart as he presents? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, like, did he get into Yale because he deserved it? Or like, was he like given a spot in Yale?
There's some
And
gross
I was
subtext there for sure.
a gross subtext, like disgusting subtext, right? Actually, it's an interesting case both for and against affirmative action. Like people don't want their accomplishments like, looked down upon because of like the perception that they didn't deserve everything they worked for. But at the same time, like, like I don't know this guy's circumstances and like how I wasn't there when he applied to college and like wrote his essays and did his interviews. But I'm like, no, he got a 1530 SAT. I literally had his SAT score. This is weird. I remember these numbers like it was yesterday. And he had a 3.86 GPA at Yale. And I was like, no, dude, this guy deserves to be there. This guy's smart. But the
Yeah.
way that clients perceive a candidate, that first impression, it was over. Like
Right.
they didn't want to talk to him. They didn't like I tell people this just so they don't panic when they don't get interviews. I'm like, oftentimes it's not your fault, dude. Like it's not,
Yeah,
it's just, it's some shitty first impression they had about the first thing on your resume or your name or where you're from. Like it's
yeah.
so unscientific how people decide to interview people. Um,
I I
yeah.
would completely agree with that, and yeah, I definitely tell people that I work with who are, applying and stuff, often they're reading too far into it. They're thinking, oh, I did X thing wrong or whatever. And for the most part, I'm like, you can't sweat stuff like that. I'd say the two things that I have suggested to some candidates, I mean, number one, we've written about and talked about is, if you have a very hard to pronounce unusual name for the country or area you're applying, like if you have a shorter nickname, use that. That's totally cool. There's no requirement; it has to be a legal name. Number two, what I've done for some candidates that have, you know, foreign sounding names, but they're US citizens, I'm like, just put that at the top of your resume, like by, your contact info and stuff. Just like put US permanent resident or whatever your status is, because a lot, like we both know, a lot of these times recruiters are recruiting for a role that will not sponsor. So they're going to just disqualify people that they think probably need sponsorship to save them time. And if you don't need sponsorship, but you look like you might, it's
Dude,
worth it, I think, to
it's
flag it. So
crazy. I wrote that Reddit post the other day. That's now it's got like 7,000 views. It clearly resonated. Like, should I change my name on my resume? And people ask me this all the time. They're like, they have a long name, maybe it's 5 syllables, 4 syllables, or whatever, and like they're like, should I change my name? And it's such a like, imagine the emotional pain at the center of that, which is like, is my core identity a blocker for me and getting an interview? And it's such an emotional question. And I feel so bad that people like I'm Colin McIntosh. Like I've never once in my life in this society been like, my name's holding me back. Like, if anything, my name has been like a signal for people to be like, yes, like, let's get this guy on the phone. Um, and which is
unless they hate
great, you know.
Scottish people, yeah.
Unless they hate Scottish people, yeah, exactly. Which, you should meet some Scottish people. But yeah, so the what I tell them is, and what I said in this Reddit post is, exactly what you just said. If you have this is gonna sound off, and I always preface this in my writing. I'm like, this is an awful thing to write. Please forgive me. If you have a foreign sounding name or a weird name, weird, like that's hard to pronounce in somebody's head, and most people have an eighth grade reading level, you need a nickname. And you should put a nickname on your resume because the story they're going to tell themselves. This is the lesson here is that recruiters tell themselves stories about candidates, and the stories are not fair, they're not accurate, and they're completely made up in the head of the resume screener. And the story they're going to tell themselves about you is that you don't speak English that well, that you need sponsorship, and that, they're going to waste their time if they put you in the yes pile. And the strategic rationale that I want people to understand is if you are a recruiter, you have 1,000 resumes to go through every day. And you have 5 hours to do that because you need 3 hours to do your other shit. You got to eat lunch, you got to talk to your boss, you got to go to meetings. So you got 5 hours to get through 1,000 resumes, 200 an hour, one every 20 seconds. And if that's the case, then strategically, whatever good or bad reasons, if you see any flag, yellow, red, or other colored, you just no column and you just move on to the next candidate because no one's looking over your shoulder, no one's reviewing your work, no one's seeing if you're being fair or equitable or whatever. They're just saying how many interviews you scheduled and were the interviews good quality. And if you pass on 90% of applicants, you're still going to get 100 interviews. If you pass on 97% of applicants, you've got 30 interviews. Your boss can't do more than 10 interviews a week. So you just got 3 weeks of interviews for your boss.
Yep.
And so you've done your job. And you may have missed 50 or 100 amazing candidates by blowing through that pile as fast as you did. But you did your job and you got your interviews. And I think that that's the way I want people to think about this is your resume is not a representation of yourself. Your resume is a tool to get on the phone with somebody. And I think actually, Nate, you taught me that way back when is I think you gave me that phrasing of the goal of the end of the resume, the singular goal is to get a phone call. And I've always held that in my head as like, oh, like this is not about my experience or about my background or my skills. This is about manipulating the reader to get on the phone with me. And I think every candidate should think about it like that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I've always thought that's one of the reasons I like resumes is because, you are crafting a narrative of yourself that presents well for your target audience, right? Like, what do you want them to take away in 2, 3 seconds when they glance at it? And is that going to be 100% you and your story? Like, no. You want it to work for what they're looking for and make them say, okay, yeah, I think this person's worth a conversation. So, yeah, that's definitely something especially when I'm working with a resume with one-on-one with somebody, it's like they've got every, bullet point detail of all their stuff. I'm like, you don't need to have all of
Nope.
that. The resume is not going to get you a job. The resume is just get you a conversation. And in a
Yep.
conversation, when you're talking about it, yeah, more details will come up. And you know what? If that wasn't on your resume, that's fine. There's more
Yes.
stuff you can bring to the conversation. That's actually good.
You
Yeah.
you also taught me that. I think you actually taught me that when I was a candidate, when I was looking at Bridgewater, you were like, "Hey, take this off your resume, bring it up in the interview," because you knew intrinsically, like I think it was about my fraternity or something like that. You were like, "This is not important to getting the interview. You're gonna get an interview because I'm gonna recommend you and I'm gonna tell them that you're a good candidate for the job." But you in the interview can bring this up and surprise the interviewer about a story that really might resonate with them and show that you're a mature candidate because of the experience that you had as this officer at your fraternity managing 40 guys. And it was funny. And I remember I brought that into the interview and I did exactly what you instructed me to do. And I was like, these guys are animals. I was like, and I've had to manage 40 animals for the
Yeah.
last 3 years. And I know I'm one of them. I'm 22 years old. I get it. But some 22-year-olds are different than 21-year-olds, different than 20-year-olds. And it was so funny the way I explained it. I was like, these guys are wild, and I had to be the adult in the room, and they really liked that. They were like, yeah, I mean, that's, real experience. And the thing is, when kids, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, when they're interviewing for their first job, this is the lesson that every adult has to learn, right? Is that there are no adults. There are no people who are fully formed human adults, professionals in the room who are smarter than everybody else, who have it all figured out. It's just a bunch of people who have continued to age day in and day out throughout their lives who are now in these higher positions making these decisions. And so a lot of times you're talking to somebody. I remember the woman who interviewed me. She was wonderful. Her name was Sage. She was so sweet. Um, and look, I thought she was like, very experienced, very polished. She was probably like 28. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, she was
If that,
probably,
yeah.
if that, right? Like, I don't know. She was maybe 30, like, and it's so funny, like, looking back at, like, my old bosses were probably, like, in their 30s, like, in their early 40s, you know what I mean? Like, and they're just guys that, like, I work with now, like, and it's so funny that younger candidates, like, get so nervous talking to these people, but it's just them in a few years.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that reminds me of another thing that I go off on a diatribe here. Uh,
Yeah,
one of the
one
things
one
I
minute, one
thought,
minute before 1 minute before Zoom stops recording, and we gotta do a new Zoom.
oh, okay, cool.
Go for it. Go into that, Trev.
What I was going to say was I think, especially with early career candidates, but even later on too, I see people so afraid to bring any personality or do anything out of the ordinary. They're just like, okay, yes, I do work and this is what I do, that they're not memorable in an interview. And I can tell you that if you're not memorable at all, if you don't stick out in someone's 5, 6, 7 calls they had that week with candidates, like, guess what? You're not advancing. You're not getting hired. Like, some personality is good. Obviously, like, yeah, don't be offensive. Don't be an asshole. Like, there's obvious things to this, but like, it can't be so uptight and boring that, they're not even going to like remember you when they think of the 5 people they talked to that week. Like, it's good to have some personality, even if you are early career, like, you know,
Yeah, make a
talk about
joke.
your
I would say
wrangling your fraternity brothers, I
a
don't know.
well-timed joke is perfect to include it in an interview. Like if you can make them laugh, you give them that dopamine hit, they remember you.
I agree.